Let's talk about our storylines. We're going to work 1 through 13 with every team. Merrimack gets the victory over Marist and then a win at Quinnipiac. As we mentioned earlier, win streak is now 6. They're only 2 losses of the season, St. Peter's and Iona.
Yeah, they've been playing such great basketball. They're a very complete team. They do a great job at communicating. They like to control the tempo of the game, I guess is the best way to say it. Their defensive efficiency is really good, but when they have control of the game and have the pace of play that they want to play with, that's when they get so dangerous. Kavar Kennedy, we mentioned him. He's second in the MAAC with points per game at 17.5. They beat Marist by 25 and then won an absolute grinder against Quinnipiac. This is really a team that can either blow you out or play in a nitty-gritty game and get down to the final seconds and still beat you. And that's what's going to make them so special come time for the MAAC tournament is how versatile the team is on the defensive and offensive end.
St. Peter's lost at Sacred Heart. That was a big one. Then they played the other Fairfield school in the Stags and beat them. JJ, tell me about that loss at Sacred Heart. That's a bad one.
It was a very rough loss for the St. Peter's team, but also not too many red flags raised from it. You're not too concerned about this loss, as we know. Getting down to this time in the MAAC, there's a lot of losses that are handing out, like Niagara beating Iona. A lot of stuff can happen in the MAAC.
That was an upset.
So, obviously an upset, but I want to go back to earlier in the year. This St. Peter's team played Seton Hall and Georgetown very early, both 2 early losses, but a lot of college coaches mention it. You would rather get tough losses out of the way against tough teams early in the schedule instead of later, because then you could gain that momentum. You have that experience against those better teams, 2 Big East teams, very good teams. But
helps you in the tournament if you make it there as well, because that's probably going to be somewhat of a team that you see. It's going to be even better probably. Let's say St. Peter's wins the conference. They're probably going to see an Arizona, a Michigan perhaps, a Duke, a Florida. So it helps.
It does help a lot, and it's really – this St. Peter's team has a lot of good pieces. There are a little bit of pieces that lack, but even that loss to Sacred Heart, it wasn't raising too many red flags for me because of how good they've been all year and how dangerous they can be in the MAAC. They've won the MAAC 2 out of the last 4 years. They've made runs before. They could do it again, especially this year.
So JJ is not concerned about St. Peter's. Here's a team I'm not concerned about, and in fact – if I'm any other team in the MAAC, I'm concerned because I think that they are a really good basketball team, the Siena Saints. They lost against Quinnipiac, but they came back with a road victory against Marist in a what should have been hostile environment. But if you watch the game, there were calls that went Siena's way, and then you heard so many cheers, and you're like, wait, did the ref mess up? Did the call not go Marist's way? No, that's the Siena faithful that made the hour-and-a-half trip down south. Really, really good team.
And you mentioned the crowd on the road, but you look at their record on the road, it's one of the best in the MAAC, 9-5 on the road. And when you really think about that come time for the MAAC tournament, that's
huge.
So huge.
They're all neutral games.
Insane.
It's even better because you don't have to deal with the opposing road crowd necessarily.
Yes, it is. When you really think about it, it's so big being able to win games on the road because you're not going to be in front of your home crowd, something that Marist is really good at, playing in front of their home crowd.
Right.
But this Siena team, so good on the road, also so good defensively. Second in points per game allowed in the MAAC, just behind Marist. And the job they do communicating on defense and really playing as one is really so special. Jerry McNamara, in his second year as Siena's head coach, he's done a great job at just bonding this team together and really calling the right plays at the right time and allowing the players to do what they want to do, especially on the offensive end.
McNamara, in addition to being a great head coach, and this is one of the reasons why he is so smart with the way he calls a timeout. And you might say, it's timeouts. Who cares? Every coach calls a timeout. The way he calls them, the timing that he does. There was a stretch where Marist was on a 9-2 run. The lead was only 12. Most coaches might say, I have 4 timeouts. I don't need to burn this right now. Nothing's going wrong. Well, he put an end to that run by calling a timeout. Momentum went back to Siena's favor. Then, on 2 different occasions in the closing 2 minutes, Marist had trap defense that was working so well. They had 2 players up with their hands up, trapping in the Saint, whoever it was that had the ball. One was on the offensive side. The other was on the defensive side. McNamara calls timeout. One was in the front court, one was in the back court, is what I mean. And McNamara calls timeout. He bails out his team. Those are 2 possessions that Marist likely would have had a forced turnover, but McNamara puts an end to it. A fantastic head coach. Another really good head coach is in Hamden on the Quinnipiac side. Beat Siena and then lost to Merrimack this week.
Tom Pecora is really such a great coach in this MAAC conference. But something I really think about this Quinnipiac team, they are the most confusing contender, in my opinion. They came in preseason MAAC team of the year, but it just doesn't seem like they can really find their stride together. They have a lot of pieces that work well together at some points and then don't work well together at others. I will say they are a very strong rebounding team. They are one of the best rebounding teams in the MAAC, but if they don't get out to a lead early, I feel like it's very hard for them to come back and chip back at that lead, and that's something about them. But Amari Monroe does a great job at bringing this team together. When he's on the court, they play so well together. But again, like the inconsistency, not finding a streak, they could score 90 points in a game or they could score 60 points in a game, and that's something about this Quinnipiac team that's a little confusing to me and kind of a little interesting going into March.
Something that you mentioned was Quinnipiac's a little confusing. Are they really that good? Are they not really? How can they do against top contenders? I bear the question. Is Marist actually legit? They lost at Merrimack. They lost at home to Siena. They are just 1-5 against teams that are above them in the standings. And unless they beat St. Peter's, to end the season, that's not going to change.
I mentioned this to you earlier. I have a lot of concerns about this Marist team right now. They have injury concerns. They have people coming in and out of the starting lineup. I said this to you earlier. I'm getting a lot of deja vu to last year. Marist, one of the best teams in the MAAC, maybe the best team in the MAAC. And then the last 5 games of the year, they dropped all 5 of them and lost the first game in the MAAC tournament. I'm getting a lot of flashbacks to that. We mentioned it earlier, you want that momentum going into
Absolutely.
March. That's one of the biggest pieces in March is having momentum. And if this Marist team doesn't pick it up in these next 3 games, there's going to be a lot of concerns. They're a super streaky team. We've seen it all year. 3 different times they've had a 4+ win streak, but also 4 different times they've had a 2+ losing streak. So it's kind of this something that it's almost like they're losing their spark at the wrong time.
Hot and cold.
It would have been perfect if this happened at the start of the year. You got some losses out of the way, but we're approaching March. This is the end of the season. Yeah. This is when seeding matters. This is where all this stuff matters. I have a lot of concerns and a lot of deja vu to last year.
And that would have been ideal if it was earlier, especially because some of the competition that you played. You played Xavier, who's in the Big East, and actually looks pretty good right now in the Big East. You played Georgia Tech, who's an ACC school. Both of those were away games. But now it's coming at the wrong time. And like you said about the deja vu, last year they weren't at full strength. Yes, Jackson Price was playing, but there were a lot of concerns that he wasn't at full health. He came back for a couple of games in March, but before that hadn't played the entirety of February practically when he got hurt in the Battle of I-87 on the 31st of January against Siena. And now this year, the Red Foxes are dealing with another big who is out for the entirety of the season. That's Tariq Watson. And they're also dealing without probably their most consistent player in Elijah Lewis, who is also out for the remainder of the season. When you talk about this team, who eliminated them last year? Mount St. Mary's. So we'll talk about the Mountaineers. Only one game to talk about, just a loss against Merrimack.
Yeah, Mount St. Mary's, they hold a very key tiebreaker. They got a January 9th win over St. Peter's, which could really swing the seeding a lot. If they get the 6th seed, they potentially avoid the 7 through 10 game, which is one of the most scary matchups in the MAAC tournament because you could get a team like Iona, who was the top leading scorers per game in the MAAC for the first 2 months of the season. So that game could be really dicey, but they've been playing really good basketball recently, only dropping 3 of their last 10 games with a lot of wins against top 4 teams in the MAAC. And they're also the second best rebounding team in the MAAC. So this Mount St. Mary's team is very dangerous. They could really make some damage come March. They actually won the MAAC with their first-year head coach last year. And this is a Mount St. Mary's team that really has a lot of pieces that work well together defensively, offensively, and it's a very versatile team.
Donnie Lind really doing a good job with those Mountaineers. Fairfield, also one game, lost at St. Peter's. That raise any red flags for you?
Not really. Not at all. They're winners of their last 5 of 7 games, which is huge. Again, momentum, keep going back to it. They did have that loss against St. Peter's, but they had a big game against Iona and their crosstown rivals in Sacred Heart. Again, a team we keep touching on. But really no red flags for this Fairfield team. I really like how they are playing and have been playing this whole year. And I think there's a lot of damage that could be done. There's also a lot of things that can be a little dicey, especially their three-point percentage. On the year, they're 33%, but at points, they could shoot over 50% from the three line, and that's something that's so big about this team. If they can find their stride come March, come in these last few games, it's going to be huge for this Fairfield team.
Is it a red flag to you that St. Peter's pulled off the number one play on SportsCenter? Elijah Perkins with a two-handed slam over two defenders. That was sick.
That was insane. One of the best dunks I've seen in the MAAC this year. What a play, what a dunk. That was just electrifying. And honestly, that probably does a lot for team chemistry for this St. Peter's team, because now they see their teammate on SportsCenter top 10 and they're like, oh wow, we got something going. We're getting some views. We're getting people watching us. That's huge for the St. Peter's team.
It most certainly is. And when you talk about huge, you look at the tiebreakers. Manhattan, 2 big victories. They swept Buffalo this past week, and Sacred Heart also swept the week with a win over St. Peter's, that upset win, and also taking care of Ryder, officially eliminated the Bronx with that latter victory, and Manhattan officially eliminated the Golden Griffs with their latter victory.
Yeah, this Manhattan team, it's a very explosive offense, maybe the most explosive offense in the MAAC at points. They have 12 games over 80 points, which is huge in college basketball. Having over 80 points is a lot. They won 2 tight ones. They've won 3 in a row, and their next game is against the struggling Red Foxes, so that could be huge for them. But this Manhattan team, again, defense is kind of a question. The last 3 games, they have only allowed 67 points, which is huge for them. But statistically, they're allowing 80 points per game, which is a lot, because that means your offense kind of has to pick it up. And if you have an off night offensively, that's the end of that. You really don't have a shot. So this Manhattan team, they could be streaky. There's a chance they could make some noise. But, again, that defense really has to step it up.